So in terms of the research that you're doing at the Institute, do you break it down based on communities and the countries that people are coming from? So for example, you mentioned you did a study based on the Korean community. Mm-hmm. Do you break it down based on, let's say, Chinese community, Indian community, Pakistani community?
Right, we will do that. Oftentimes the data is presented in terms of the national data, but because there are specific organizations that we're aware of that could use data, we put that together. So in the case of the Korean American community, a group of Korean American business leaders came to me and said, do you have data like this? And I know the data exists. So I was able to access the data, put it together to present, and then to put together an analysis of what that data seemed to indicate. So for example, the fact that businesses in these communities have grown tremendously in terms of numbers, that doesn't tell the whole story. The question then becomes, well, what kind of revenues have been generated? And we find that the revenues have increased. Okay, fine. Well, has payroll increased? Did they hire more people? And the answer to that is yes. And then we'd say, well, who's generating this? Is the growth consistent across the board? And we find that no, the growth is not consistent across the board. There's 41% of the businesses that are mom and pop. And we find that a lot of them have opened up in the last few years, and that tells you that there may be fewer job opportunities over the last few years because of the economy, and so there's a greater increase in small businesses because folks have to make a living. And so it's a question of what is the data and then what does it mean?
Would you say that many of the types of businesses that are opened are similar across the Asian communities?
Yes, I would say so. There tends to be certain kinds of businesses that open that serve the community, and that's where most immigrant businesses start. So they may, for example, make food that's for their own community and consumers in their own community. Mainstream may learn about it. Then you get a review in a mainstream newspaper somewhere, and suddenly you have a different audience. But this different audience may love the authenticity, but the presentation may have to change a little bit. Maybe the recipe has to be changed a little bit to fit their palate, and so on.